Thank you. Great setup. Great setup for my presentation. So first of all, I want to thank the speakers from Microsoft and to echo Brian, thank you for hosting. Great facility. We're recording, right? So the recordings will be available afterwards for anybody that couldn't make it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a few words about our roadmap on the core side, so core database integrations, which is a new team that we formed actually to support ecosystem integrations like Superset, and a little bit about our cloud plans. So maybe just a few words about myself. I've been with ClickHouse officially for a year, but I've been familiar with this technology for a long time. I've been in the data space for over a decade. Actually, I went to UW for grad school, and I lived in Seattle for 5 years, and I started my postgraduate career with a company called ExtraHop, based in Seattle. So huge fan of Pacific Northwest, Seattle in particular, and it's just so great to be here. Okay, so let's actually, we don't have a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with core. And before I get into specifics, I want to start with the meta topic of how do we basically, how do we roadmap, right? How do we create the roadmap? How do we collaborate with the community? Like many projects that are open source, of course, we leverage GitHub for the collaboration. You can see all of our issues. But in addition to that, we start every year with a discussion with our community around where we should focus. And if you look at the cadence, in 2022 we have an issue that you can look at, which lists a number of themes that we invest in, or we basically collaborate with folks in the community to invest in. 2023 issue was posted just at the end of last year, and you can see some of the themes here, and of course I'll go through them. In addition to this open discussion, we host monthly webinars where we give you updates on the progress that we made and go into a lot of details on some of the new things that we introduced. And the next one is actually scheduled for January 25th. So yeah, if you haven't been aware of these resources, just do know that you can go and have a discussion with us. So when it comes to the collaboration, we try to keep it very open. Okay, so the themes. Faster data onboarding. We talked a little bit about how important it is to have an easy kind of interface to self-service onboarding data. And there are a few areas in which we're actively investing. One is called schema inference. So when it comes to the various data formats, ClickHouse already has really good support for the formats, both of files and that really doesn't matter. If you look at the data lakes ecosystem, pretty much any format that you can think of is either supported or we're planning to support. But in addition to that, we try to sort of infer the schema from the data itself, and that's the idea with schema inference. A big investment on this last year. There's, I'm saying it's done. Of course, it's never completely done. We're going to continue to try to basically make onboarding any data as simple as possible going forward. The next one is semi-structured data. So JSON data, of course, is very abundant and prevalent. ClickHouse already has good support for working with JSON data, but today this requires basically parsing the data into structured columns. It gives you very good performance, and a lot of users are very successful with it, but we're getting requests for more native support for JSON data inside ClickHouse itself, where basically we're automatically from this JSON data generate the right structure. So there's an experimental object, there's a type called JSON object, which you can use for basically storing some structured data and automatically working with it. It's not production ready yet, so we don't recommend using it in mission critical systems, but I do talk to a lot of users that do anyway and use it at scale. So we're working pretty hard to get it to be production ready in 2023. I already mentioned data lakes, that ClickHouse, traditionally, we really haven't focused on directly working with data in in object stores, partially because the latency can be pretty bad, and for a real-time analytics system, this was not something that was a focus, but there's a lot of demand, I would say, to combine real-time analytics with some sort of ad hoc analytics in object stores. So actually, the Hudi and Delta Lake support is relatively new, contributed by our community. So as we see demand, we continue to kind of expand support within ClickHouse to connect to object stores and use some of these formats for analytics. One thing I will mention also here, so it's kind of known, of course, that you can run ClickHouse as a server and as a cluster. We also have a tool called ClickHouse Local. I don't have it mentioned on this slide, but that goes actually pretty well with, if you're just a developer working with data in an object store, you don't have to stand up a whole server. You can just use a binary called ClickHouse Local and connect to data somewhere. As long as you have enough resources on your laptop to kind of do some processing, you can experiment very quickly and prototype very quickly using ClickHouse Local. So this is something that we're investing in just because we're seeing kind of the demand from developers in particular in this area. Okay, analytics. So there was a lot of, I guess, content in the previous presentation around optimization and optimizing queries. Again, traditionally, ClickHouse was developed for a use case where a developer writes the query and sort of puts it into the application. And at that point, as a developer, of course, you can just really optimize this query for your use case. But more and more, we're seeing use cases around internal analytics where queries are written ad hoc. And this is where dynamic query optimization is very important. We heard that the team here had to basically build it themselves, right, and build this into Superset, which was really impressive. I found that slide to be really impressive. What we would like to do within ClickHouse is to basically make that easier for everyone. So within the core product itself, we've actually already added something called an analyzer. It's a component that will proactively analyze the structure of the query. And this opens up a possibility of doing a lot of the things that you see next here. So improving join support, supporting some standard SQL commands that we don't support today, such as correlated subqueries. So this analyzer project is big. That's going to be a big core investment for 2023. We're going to work to enable this analyzer by default and subsequently start enabling new capabilities on top of it. So join support. ClickHouse does support joins, but again, you kind of have to know what you're doing, right? And you have to be very careful with how you use joins in ClickHouse today. There's a number of join algorithms, some of them new from 2022. But the thing that I think the teams lack in particular is this automatic sort of join algorithm selection and optimization. And that's exactly what we want to focus on next once Analyzer is in place. So big investment. We hear the need, right, to do more flexible joins. And it's something that we would love to collaborate on. If there's something that we should do sooner, let's just say, within this area for the teams here, we should discuss. Definitely take it offline and discuss. Going along with the joint investments, we were going to start investing in additional benchmarks to make sure that not only the compatibility is there, but the performance is also there. So TPC-H, TPC-DS, those benchmarks are already automated within ClickHouse. Once we have it fully tuned in, we will start publishing it publicly. Okay, so I'll just keep going. Maybe we'll do questions at the end. By the way, the analyzer issue, just like everything else, is in GitHub, right? So if you want to go see, okay, like what is this analyzer project about, right? Like everything is fully open, and I'll just say from my part, like I've never seen such an engaged, let's just say, community of external contributors to ClickHouse. ClickHouse is not a foundation project, but having said that, like in terms of external contributions, it's a very welcoming project. You'll see many people, first-time contributors that have been contributing to the project for years, be outside of ClickHouse, right? And this is something that's pretty unique. Oh, I don't know what's happening there. Okay, data management. So a couple of things here. There's a mechanism within ClickHouse that's not super new, but like I just find that maybe users don't know about it that much, called asynchronous inserts for use cases where your source is sending data, let's say row by row, right? Like you don't want to write data that way into an analytical database. For performance reasons, you need to batch them. And there's an internal mechanism for batching called async insert that you can turn on for your use case. But there's been a catch. Until recently, it hasn't supported deduplication. Recently, this gap has been closed. And so this is something that we now recommend users do. We turn it on by default in ClickHouse Cloud. It's just a convenience feature. You can, of course, batch outside of ClickHouse. That's fine. But if you do need this mechanism, it's useful to have. Transactions. So what I mean here is ability to define in SQL, or standard SQL, things like begin transaction, commit, rollback. Use cases vary, right? One common use case is we were talking about like keeping data in sync between various tables and views and partitions. Atomicity there becomes important, and this is one use case for transactions potentially within ClickHouse. This is a new capability that was added last year, but it's still in preview and in heavy development. Right now, it doesn't work with replicated merge tree, so it's again, very early. We're getting feedback on it, but it is something that we aim to finish in 2023. Deletes. There was a request, I think, for lightweight deletes. Was that one of the things? Yes. So this is, again, something that was added to the project in experimental, I want to say like second part of last year. And we're gonna finish it up pretty soon. It's probably gonna be production ready, I would say, in the first quarter of this year. Definitely a lot of requests for it. The way it works is basically a tombstone approach. So the delete itself, happens during the merge, but the application basically, doesn't see deleted data due to the way we mark the various records themselves. Okay. Operations and resiliency. Of course, there's a lot here. I'm sure this slide is not going to do justice to this topic. A few things to mention. ClickHouse Keeper was something that was discussed earlier. Zookeeper traditionally has been the way to keep state consistent within ClickHouse. ClickHouse Keeper is, you can think of that as a streamlined version of that. We're running it ourselves in ClickHouse Cloud at scale. It is production ready, and we do recommend using that or moving to that as you evolve your deployments. Backup restores were mentioned. Yes, it's a new feature. I would say it's still, I have a check mark there, but it is true that it's still very early. Like, it's there, it's production ready, but we still have more work to do to expand it. In particular, we did recently add support for backup restore on top of object stores, but right now it's not yet available in Azure, so we're aware, and we will continue to work to expand its capabilities. New platforms, ARM architectures are popular. We have full support for this as of the first part of last year. Pretty excited about it. And again, going to continue to make sure that ClickHouse runs on pretty much any hardware architecture that makes sense. It's always been a focus. Last but not least, hardening and testing. This is a big focus for the team. Our CI system is very let's just say expansive. There's a lot happening there, and for us to be productive and for our contributors to be productive, we're continuously investing in keeping it fast and keeping it stable. In addition to that, fuzzing is a pretty important aspect of keeping software like ClickHouse secure, and so we already have really good support for fuzzing across the code base, but working on more complete coverage there. Fully static builds for ClickHouse is something that's on a roadmap for 2023, and just additional hardening techniques like SQL logic test integration. Again, I'm just going very fast here. The full detail, if I'll go back to the first slide, is in these roadmap issues. 2023 was just published, again, a few weeks ago. We welcome discussion. We welcome feedback. And for any team here that has a significant use case for ClickHouse, I would love to also talk to you after the fact and maybe set up a deep dive with our core team. I think that would be really great, because clearly there's an opportunity to collaborate on some aspects of this roadmap. Okay, I'll keep going because, we'll do questions at the end. Ecosystem integrations. So actually, really quick, I wanted to see if folks can guess, like if you, just so don't go right now, don't search, but if you did go to GitHub and if you did search for ClickHouse, any guesses as to how many projects exist that are not forks of ClickHouse that integrate with ClickHouse? Rough order of magnitude. And don't be limited by this. Maybe it's like 10,000. Any guess? 10? Okay, maybe show of hands. Who thinks it's like around 10? Okay. Hundreds? Okay, okay. Thousands? Okay, good. Yes, you're right. You're right. You all get some sort of prize. We'll see. Thousands. There are thousands of projects that integrate with ClickHouse, which is great. A really, really, vibrant ecosystem. But how do you, as a user, choose the right project if you are looking at this ecosystem? Which clients should you use? Which data visualization platforms? Like there's just so much, right? I mean, even if you just look at the most popular, it's still like hundreds, right? So what we started to do, first of all, we have a team now, in addition to our core team, called the integrations team. And this team wakes up every morning basically thinking about how do we support this ecosystem. There are partners, there are open source contributors, there are some integrations that we want to build, right, and put out there. So this team, that's exactly what it does. We build some integrations. We work with the community to support others. Like a good example is the JDBC driver is a community project, and we support that contributor. And if there's a company that wants to partner with us, we have bandwidth and resources to do this now. So superset was mentioned, right? This was something that was pretty important for us to support out of the box. You see some other popular technologies here. So there's now a page that talks about all of the integrations that we support. And here's a list. Again, this is a very long list. I probably won't be able to go bit by bit. Hopefully these slides will be available. These slides will be available afterwards. We will post them. So just some examples in the data integration orchestration space. Of course, there's support for Kafka. There's support for integrating with various row-oriented data stores. But one interesting example, so recently, dbt has become popular for kind of data orchestration, and we've partnered with dbt, and there's an external contributor to mature that integration. And there's just a lot of demand for that kind of integration from the community. We have a webinar coming up next week to talk about this jointly with dbt. So yeah, you can see the list here. Again, I'll just kind of leave it up. And what this, so the green means it's completed. Of course, we always continue to improve, but it's production ready. Yellow means it's in development, so a few things we haven't started working on yet. And then orange means like it's coming up next. And then the fire means like recently improved. So if there's any integrations that you don't see on here, let's talk. I think obviously this is just for now where we are, but there's a long backlog of things that we could be focusing on. Okay, just really quick. So as I mentioned, as a company, we develop ClickHouse as a core technology. We work on integrations. In addition to that, we support customers like yourselves running ClickHouse on premises, but we also have a new offering called ClickHouse Cloud. It's a serverless offering in a sense that you don't have to know that much about ClickHouse administration. You interact with it just by kind of creating an account and start, basically you can start sending your data to a cluster, within a few minutes. Like that's kind of the level of knowledge that's required. Interestingly, we're seeing a lot of people who've never used ClickHouse before coming to this service. They maybe have heard of it or used some similar technology, but perceived for the right reasons that maybe it's quite an involved effort to run their own ClickHouse installation. So ClickHouse Cloud, for many people, is a platform to learn the technology, to experiment with it, and to maybe start a new project. We're seeing a lot of that kind of activity right now. We developed it over the course of last year. So I actually joined the company 12 months ago, and we were still kind of in the planning stages. It was a pretty focused development effort. You can see the milestones here. We had a private preview period with users from May to July. We had a public beta launch in October, and it went GA in December. It started off, we started off in AWS, and right now we're expanding to Azure and GCP. Just a few screenshots just to give you a sense. Again, like the onboarding experience is very simple. You just launch a cluster. We have a development and a production offering. You can choose a cloud provider, a region. Once you have a cluster, of course, we give you operational views into what's happening. But then there's also kind of the easy button to connect integrations and to work with your data. So again, I don't have time for an in-depth demo, but if you're interested, pretty easy to sign up and try it out yourself. And yeah, when it comes to the Azure offering, of course, we're already working with Microsoft, and we look forward to continue that collaboration. Okay, that's all I had. I wanted to go through things pretty quickly, so hopefully that was useful, and I think we'll now take questions. Okay, very good. Thank you.
So Brian, we have some time for questions, maybe at least 5-10 minutes. Yeah, maybe Lynn, Narendra. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe we'll give one mic for the person asking the question.
Yeah, thank you. So really great talks. In fact, all of them are great. Thank you for hosting this. Storage. So you're running these very large clusters. Can you talk a little bit about what you're using for the underlying storage? So are you running on NVMe SSD? Are you using block storage? Are you using tiered storage? Being really interested in hearing about how your products are approaching that.
So, okay, yeah, right now for us is like we are using local SSD. Yeah, but we do exploring like can we settle tier storage using remote SSD and etc. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think in the questions for the WebXT, you do a lot of optimization. Just wondering, did you have experience with projection or the dictionary kind of stuff? Just wondering, yeah.
For the Titan scenario, you mean if we use dictionary?
Yeah, or the projection, right? But no. I mean like right, to support in ClickHouse when you like query pattern changes, right? Sometimes you create a material view or projection, kind of thing. Or use a dictionary in the memory, stuff like that.
So materialized view, that's I think you may see that's one thing it's like it's our wish list is like we do want to use materialized view. One challenge we have is like we do see a lot of scenarios we need to keep on refreshing or backfill the data.
Yeah.
And for materialized view is like once you generate it, and if we backfill data and change the data, the materialized view may not be updated. So in that case, we cannot fully utilize that. So we didn't use that a lot. We don't use that a lot. Yeah.
A lot of the recommendations, projection is one of the choice. So our team potentially in the future we can use that. Just wondering, do you guys have the experience? It seems probably not yet, right?
Yeah, for us it because that limitation, so we cannot fully leverage. But once we have that issue, if there's new feature delivery, we definitely want to try it.
Yeah, probably we should chat offline. Looks like you probably have a solution we could also collaborate more and understand. Yeah.
For Titan specifically, what's the breakdown for internal usage between people able to use superset or needing to kind of escalate to that custom client view?
Custom client in the sense? The one that was connected to the API. I see. Got it. Yeah. So I think the question is how many people use Superset, the UI form versus other tools, right? Yeah. So predominantly, it's actually, at least until last year, it was mostly the Superset UI. Like, if I say we have 2,500 monthly users, like maybe last year we had more like half of it. Like it was predominantly that. But then again, when we coming from other tools like Intrana, a lot of the focus was on product managers or developers. But then as time went, we started centralizing more data sets. So this need grew up. So at least I would say maybe 30% of the usage is what we have on these other API and SQL and whatnot. In fact, people want to use even more. It's just that sometimes we give SQL access, somebody can just do some really crazy things, and then it brings people down. Even API access, suddenly it's like an internal bot doing so many things. So we are still figuring it out. We do feel like eventually it may be like 50-50. But yeah, right now it's more like 30%. But it's a very significant usage. Another thing I want to call out is we build this bring your own data set feature. So in the past, like the main Titan team, you have to work with onboarding like really large volumes of data, right? Like, and it's like a white glove treatment. Recently, at least in the last year, we built this self-serve ingestion, which is like, you can have a ORC file, put it somewhere, tell us, and then we just inject on our own. So that actually picked up quite a bit. Like we have like almost like a daily 120 people using some of those data sets. It started as something where people test it out and then they get the capacity, but then it is actually proving to be a lot more faster. So yeah, I think that is also plays a big part. So that you have your own data set, you're doing some data science project. First, you have to get it into the project and then use it. Yeah. Does that? Yeah. Cool.
Lynn, you mentioned you have like multiple clusters. And what I'm interested in is maybe you can share what are the strategies when you would want to stand up a new cluster? Do you separate clusters by traffic pattern or by product, by encapsulation of privacy? Like what are some of the considerations you make when to do that?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. Is there a couple of things we need to consider there? Is like right now we're using Zookeeper. So we do see some limitations is how big the cluster can go. So this is one limitation is ideally I want to have one big cluster setup with like multi-tenancy there, but we have to break down. So we do based on two things. One is scenario. So for real time, because the way we ingest is very different from the others. So real time it has own cluster, and also BYOD, the self-serving onboarding one, because we want to separate out from the remaining kind of like fully support users. It's more like self-serving one. So that's another cluster. And also like for big partners like Bing and MSN, we also kind of separate that. So right now that's how we do the separation. But ideally, we do want to start to come because the more cluster we have, the more maintenance we need to do. So we do want to kind of like uncombine them. But right now, that's current setup. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like one more thing. Exactly what she said, but one of the key things to keep in mind is data skew. So when we are deciding the design of clusters, if we know that there are certain behemoths out there that we have to support, and we don't want to put mom and pop stores on the same cluster for them. So data skew, whether you talk about Clarity or you talk about Titan, is something that must go into the design decisions while you're coming up with this. Otherwise, because the entire performance kind of starts and ends with that, right? If you make a wrong decision at that point, then even though ClickHouse might be offering lots of good features for performance, you made the wrong choice in the beginning. So your perception of performance, etc., will be skewed. So that irrespective of the underlying technology in big data platforms, the data skew is something you try to avoid as much as possible. I mean, like if you decide that you're going to partition, that you're going to create two clusters, one is going to handle traffic from the eastern area and one is going to do it from the western area, and most of your customers who are big end up in one of those data centers, then you'll have inefficiencies, right? So that's what I was saying.
Anybody else?
I have a question for folks in the room, actually. I'm curious, in addition to the teams that already shared kind of their wish lists, are there any other either feature requests or areas of improvement that you would like to see from the ClickHouse project? Or like out of the things that I've talked about, like is there something you're particularly excited about? Yeah.
Ong is our main dev lead for Titan.
Actually, before I come here, I prepare a lot of questions to ClickHouse, but most of them has been resolved or you're improving that. So one question is, to improve the efficiency, we set a user ID as a partition key, and if we calculated the UU, we do need to roll up all the user IDs into a centralized server, and we can do the count distinct on the local machine and just summarize the numbers. So my question is, if we scale out the cluster from, for example, 10 machines to 12 machines, so can ClickHouse automate move the data, repartition to the 12 machine rather than we do that by ourselves, because for now we have to prepare new virtual machines and regent all the data and return the 10 machines. That's a feature request.
Great question. So automatic rebalancing, this is something that the team is discussing. It's not officially on the 2023 roadmap, but we're actually, curious like how much interest there is in that. It's a double-edged sword, right? When you do rebalancing, automatically you are using cluster resources, and it can be a little bit unpredictable. I'm very familiar with Elasticsearch, for instance, that has that capability, and one of the challenges our users had, with rebalancing is that sometimes it would affect cluster performance, right? So you have to do it right if you do it. We are considering it, and actually would be very interested to hear from the teams. Like maybe show of hands of like anybody who's running a big installation of ClickHouse. Like, would you like to see automatic rebalancing? Like, how important is it? In addition to the gentleman in green. Okay. So everybody wants it. Okay, good. This is important, right? This is important to us. The team is discussing it. I don't have like a commit yet whether we're going to put it on a roadmap, but actually go to the GitHub issue and start talking about it. Like, I think it's the amazing part is that when we see interest and when we see kind of the desire, right, to have something, it does affect our plans. The whole point of this roadmap issue is to put out our suggested roadmap and to hear from all of you. So thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No future requests?
Tanya, I have one. So, by the way, just background, my name is Robert. I work for Altinity, where we support ClickHouse and run a cloud service. But one of the, in data management, you talked about lightweight deletes, but we've been doing a lot of work, and many of the people we know are using replacing merge tree. And so I have two questions. One for the audience is there anybody here who's using replacing merge tree? Okay, a few. Great. Okay, so some of you, is this something that, it's not on the roadmap now. I mean, we can put it on, but we've been doing PRs around this. Mm-hmm. And this is something where I feel like, just based on the use cases we've seen, it is a very, very powerful table type. And there's definitely community interest. For people who are using it right now, if you want to talk about how to make it better, I'd love to talk to you, because we think it's like one of the hidden gems of ClickHouse. But it's something we'd love to get on the roadmap and collaborate more with you guys, like getting faster review on PRs, because there's a couple of big PRs that are aimed to make it better.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll just say that PR review in general is a challenge, right? Like, we have a very engaged community, and we try as much as possible to review PRs in a timely manner. But if there's something that's languishing, do let me know. Yeah, and we'll talk offline about this. Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks. And for anybody who's using RMT, if you want to talk about it and how to make it better, we're all ears. We have developers working on it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, very good.
Or are we standing between you and the lunch?
All right. Anyway. If you have any additional requests, just come talk to me afterwards. We'd love to hear from you. And again, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, we have folks from other folks in the team, like, for example, Palabi PM here. We have GMs, and so just feel free to mingle and ask. Yeah. Thank you so much again, ClickHouse. Yeah.
Thank you.